Hello and welcome to the Legare Microsoft Project Connector demonstration. This is just going to be a short set of slides before the actual software demonstration begins. And what we're going to take you through is what's the problem we're trying to solve with the Microsoft Project Connector. So the problem at a high level is that many companies are using both Microsoft Projects and Primavera P6 at different levels of the organization. Eventually these systems need to exchange information with each other. MSP data is going to need to be uploaded to P6, or P6 data is going to need to be downloaded to MSP files. The main problem with this is that MSP data is not like P6 data. For example, WBSs, calculations, and custom fields all work differently. The other problem with this is the native P6 import-export facility is very rigid and doesn't have a lot of flexibility. There's only one way to do the import. So we think there's a need for an easy-to-use tool which enables MSP data to be uploaded into P6. And we think that tool is the Legare MSP connector. So what does Legare do specifically? Well, it has built-in knowledge about the Microsoft project data, it has built-in knowledge about the Primavera data, and it helps you link the two systems together by letting you use the standard Legare functionality. So that functionality lets you create data mappings and link fields in the two systems together. It performs as much automatic conversion as possible when transferring data from one system to the other, and it lets you make your own data transformations to make the integration as smooth as possible. And with those custom transformations, you can do your business specific requirements or any deviations from the standard that you might want to apply. Once you've done all of this, it can be saved as a configuration, which is the set of rules and mappings that can be reused again and again later. And when we're exporting data from P6 out to MSP, we also take care to take out activity codes as pick lists, and for example resources from P6 will also be exported to the MSP resource dictionary. And this means that you get some measure of data integrity in MSP, which usually wouldn't have any. This slide just shows you the kinds of data you can read and write from both systems. So on the MSP side, we're letting you access tasks, custom fields, resources and relationships, and on the P6 side we're letting you access activities, WBS, activity codes and UDFs, resource assignments, relationships and resources, and each of these can be mapped to each other in any way you like to fit your requirements. That's it for the slides introduction, and now we'll go on to the software demonstration. This demonstration is going to cover some of the key concepts of Legare, the look and feel, and specifically we're going to be loading an MS project plan into Primavera using the Legare MS Projects connector. And this is going to let us create WBS, activities, resource assignments and more in P6 from an MS project plan. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you the MS project plan that I'm going to load. Now this is a simple schedule which covers the construction of an office building. We've got various tasks that follow that construction through from planning and conception stages to the actual building. What I'll point out while we're in here is that we've got basic task information, but we're also using some custom fields, and we're going to be importing those into P6 as well. And we'll come back and look at those when we're looking at our configuration. On the P6 side, we have a completely empty plan. Legare is just as happy updating an existing plan, but for the purposes of the demonstration, it's a lot easier to see what's going on visually if we start with an empty plan. Now we've looked at the data, the next step is to start using Legare to load that data. The first thing we're going to do is import the WBS structure from the MS project plan into our P6 plan. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to load a configuration which is Legare's way of expressing the rules and mappings about what data is going to be transferred. So I'm going to load a configuration I made earlier of the type WBS, and when I load this up, what Legare is going to do is populate the interface with all the rules that embody this configuration. And what I'll do is I'm going to skip over the specifics of this right now, and we'll look at it in detail when we import the activities using that configuration. So in this case, I'm just going to run the job. Legare is going to take that configuration and query the MS project file, and it's going to start importing that data into P6. Now that that's done, we can come back into P6 and do a refresh, and you can see that our WBS structure has been built from the one in the MS project plan. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to load the activities into the plan now that we have our WBS structure. And to do that, we're going to go back to Legare and load another type of configuration. So in this case, it's an import configuration. And this time we're going to look in more detail at what makes up a configuration so that you can understand how Legare interacts with the MSP file and how you as a user interact with Legare. So the first screen I'm going to cover off is this one here. This is the connector tab. This is where within Legare you choose which type of data source you're going to be connecting to. So in our case it's MS Project. And then once you've selected the data type, whether it's a database or a file, what it does, Legare does, is goes into that data source and interrogates it. So it makes a set of pick lists which are going to be used in all the other screens to make the mapping process as simple as possible. Next screen is the project screen. This is where you select which P6 project within the structure you want to update. So we've simply selected this MSP import demos here. The next screen is the mappings. So on the mapping screen, this is where we build the relationships between the fields in P6 and the fields in MSP. And you can see that there's a list of them in the table here. So these are all the mappings I've already created to extract specific data from MS Project and move it over into P6. Now all of these have been created by just following simple pick lists. You can see on the top here we have the list of P6 fields, and on the bottom here we have the list of MSP fields. What we do is we just put these together and then click Add Mapping. Then they appear in the table and become an active mapping. If I want to edit any of these, I can double click on them and do so. What I'll do now is just talk a little bit more about mappings. So the other thing to note here about these mappings, they create a relationship between a field in P6 and a field in MSP, but Legare has built-in knowledge about both the MSP fields and the P6 fields. So all the conversion between the different types happens automatically. You don't need to intervene and do that. But it is possible for you to create your own specific mappings and transformations as well. So I'll now go into detail about a couple more of the mappings I actually have here to explain what's going on there. So the first mapping I want to look at here is the mapping going to the Primavera activity ID. You can see here that we're actually mapping this to the custom field text1 on task from MSP. So if we go back and look at our MS project file, you'll see that we have a custom field here, P6 activity ID. So what we've done is rather than use the built-in task IDs that come with MS Project, which are just 1, 2, 3, 4, we've actually added a column in MSP which is going to serve as our Primavera activity ID. Then we've used Legare to specify that we should use that field specifically for the ID. And this makes it completely flexible, so you could use any field you wanted to create the mapping between the two systems. One of the other mappings I've created is for a UDF called comments, and this is being read from MSP, this column here, additional notes, so that's going to come over and become a UDF in P6. Again, this is completely flexible. And the final one is what we have as a flag in MSP, so it's a yes or no value, and we're going to read that over and put that into an activity code in P6 so that it forms a pick list in both systems. To point out the other fields that I've got mapped, I'm also got WBS mapped so that activities land up under the right WBS. We're going to bring across our dates and durations, we're going to bring across our descriptions, and we're also going to bring across all the resources associated with every task. So you can see only a short list of mappings is needed to begin to bring over meaningful data from MSP into P6 in a controlled fashion. What we'll do now is we'll go on and look at the part of the configuration that is going to bring in relationships. So if I move to this tab here, relationships, you can see we have import relationships enabled, and again we have a set of basic mappings which are going to take over the appropriate data into P6. So it's just standard data like the predecessor, successor, the lag, and the type associated with each relationship. The final thing we're going to do now is go to the Run tab and actually run the data in. So again, this is the same as I was doing in the WBS module, but what we're doing here is we're reading the MSP file into Legare. It's performing all the transformations and data loading, and then it's going to load that data into P6. When I'm running it here, I'm actually running a job manually. You can see obviously I'm opening Legare, I'm loading a configuration, I'm pressing the run button and watching the feedback as it happens. But it's possible for this whole process to actually be automated. Configurations can be created ahead of time and then scheduled to run any time possible. And email reports of how the job went can be emailed to stakeholders. Now that our job's complete, we're going to go back into Primavera and perform a refresh. And you can see all our activity data and resource data has been added. So I'll just clarify what we've got here. We've got our WBS structure, which we imported the first time, but you can see now our activities are here too, with relationships. We've also got our resources, these have been assigned. And we also have our code, which is representing the pick list, the flag from MSP. And finally, we have our UDF here in comments. So you can see our plan has been imported quite easily from MSP, and it's flexible to let you decide which fields should come over and how they should behave in P6.